Caden Rowe's pen scratched against the worn pages of her green notebook, recording ammunition counts with mechanical precision, when Navy SEAL Commander Marcus Kane leaned over her shoulder during the weapons audit. As she flipped to a fresh page, something caught his trained eye. A faded patch tucked between the pages bearing a skull and crosshairs, with words that made his blood run cold. Phantom Sniper, 2,700 meter. Club. Only 4 snipers in military history had earned that legendary patch, and according to classified records, all 4 were dead. Caden calmly closed the notebook, looked up at the stunned SEAL with eyes that held secrets darker than any battlefield, and continued writing as if nothing had happened. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the ammunition depot at Joint Base Louis McCord, casting harsh shadows across rows of metal shelving that stretched toward the concrete ceiling. Caden Rowe sat hunched over her desk in the corner, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun that had loosened throughout the morning shift. The green notebook before her bore the scars of countless audits, its cover worn smooth by her calloused hands, edges frayed from years of constant use. Each page contained neat columns of numbers, ammunition types, and serial codes written in her precise handwriting that never wavered, even after 12-hour shifts that left her shoulders aching and her eyes burning. The morning inventory had started like any other. Pallets of ammunition crates arrived before dawn, their contents requiring meticulous documentation before transfer to various military units across the Pacific Northwest. Caden had developed a rhythm over her 3 years in this position, a methodical approach that allowed her mind to wander while her hands performed the familiar motions of counting, recording, and cross-referencing. She preferred the solitude of the depot, the predictable nature of numbers and logistics that demanded nothing more than accuracy and attention to detail. Her supervisor, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, had mentioned that morning that a special operations team would be conducting their own audit alongside the regular inventory process. Something about discrepancies in their ammunition requests over the past 6 months. Paperwork that didn't match actual usage reports from their recent deployment. Caden had simply nodded, making a mental note to stay out of their way while continuing her own work. She had no interest in drawing attention from special operations personnel, particularly those whose presence typically meant classified missions and questions she preferred not to answer. The SEAL team arrived just after 1000 hours, their desert combat boots echoing against the concrete floor as they moved with the fluid precision that marked elite military units. Caden glanced up briefly from her notebook, taking in their appearance with the practiced assessment of someone who had learned to read people quickly and accurately. The team leader, a man in his mid-30s, with the weathered face of someone who had spent considerable time in harsh environments, carried himself with the quiet confidence that came from commanding respect through actions rather than words. Commander Marcus Kane had led SEAL Team 7 through 3 combat deployments in the Middle East, earning multiple commendations for operations that remained classified long after his return to stateside duty. His reputation preceded him in military circles, stories of impossible rescues and precision strikes that had become legend among special operations communities. Today, however, he was focused on a mundane task that seemed beneath his skill set, investigating ammunition discrepancies that suggested either poor record-keeping or something more troubling. As the SEAL team spread throughout the depot, checking serial numbers against their requisition forms, Kane found himself drawn to the quiet efficiency of the woman working at the corner desk. Something about her posture suggested military training, the way she held her shoulders, and the deliberate economy of her movements. Her civilian contractor status seemed at odds with the disciplined precision of her work, and he wondered briefly about her background before returning his attention to the task at hand. Caden was aware of his scrutiny but continued her work without acknowledgement, her pen moving steadily across the page as she recorded the contents of each ammunition crate. The numbers told their own story, patterns of usage and allocation that painted pictures of training exercises, combat operations, and the constant preparation that defined military readiness. She had learned to read between the lines of these reports, understanding the implications of sudden spikes in certain ammunition types or unusual requests for specialized rounds. The morning progressed without incident, until Kane approached her desk to verify a discrepancy in their .50 caliber ammunition count. The numbers in his requisition forms didn't match the depot records, suggesting either an error in documentation or unauthorized usage that required investigation. He positioned himself beside her chair, close enough to see the detailed entries in her notebook, while maintaining a respectful distance that wouldn't interfere with her work. Caden looked up as he approached, her dark eyes meeting his with a directness that surprised him. Most civilian contractors showed deference when dealing with special operations personnel, a combination of respect and intimidation that created distance. Her gaze held neither quality, instead showing the calm assessment of someone accustomed to evaluating potential threats or allies with equal measure. "Commander Kane," she said simply, her voice carrying a slight rasp that suggested years of harsh environments or perhaps too many cigarettes. "What can I help you with?" "We're showing a discrepancy of 200 rounds of .50 caliber match-grade ammunition," Kane replied, showing her the requisition form. "Your records indicate we received a full shipment last month, but our inventory shows we're short." Caden nodded, flipping through several pages of her notebook to locate the relevant entries. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, finding the correct date and cross-referencing multiple entries to provide a complete picture of the ammunition's journey through the depot. Kane watched her work, noting the systematic approach that suggested extensive experience with military logistics. "Here's the initial receipt," she said, pointing to a series of numbers in her careful handwriting. "Full shipment of 1,000 rounds, match grade, lot number 7742. Signed off by your team leader, Petty Officer First Class Davidson, on the 15th. Kane leaned closer to examine the entry, his shoulder nearly brushing hers as he studied the documentation. The proximity allowed him to catch the faint scent of her shampoo, mixed with the metallic smell of ammunition and gun oil that permeated the depot. Something about the combination triggered a memory, though he couldn't immediately place its significance. "Davidson's been on leave since the 10th, Kane said, frowning at the signature on the page. "Someone else must have signed for him." "That's possible," Caden agreed, turning to the next page to continue tracking the ammunition's movement. "Sometimes team members sign for each other when schedules don't align with delivery times." As she flipped the page, a corner of faded fabric became visible, tucked between the notebook's pages like a bookmark. The material was desert camouflage with black embroidered details, and Kane's trained eye immediately recognized it as a military patch, despite only seeing a small portion. His curiosity was piqued, but before he could get a better look, Caden had continued to the next page, covering the patch once again. The investigation continued for another 20 minutes, with Caden providing detailed documentation for every aspect of the ammunition shipment. Her records were immaculate, showing a level of attention to detail that impressed even Kane's exacting standards. Each entry was cross-referenced with multiple sources, creating a comprehensive audit trail that would satisfy any investigation. "Your record-keeping is exceptional," Kane commented as they worked through the final entries. "Military training?" "Something like that," Caden replied, her tone neutral, but carrying an undertone that suggested the subject was closed to further discussion. Kane accepted her deflection without pressing, understanding that many people in military support roles preferred to keep their backgrounds private. The work spoke for itself, and her competence was undeniable, regardless of her previous experience. Still, something about her demeanor continued to intrigue him, a quality that suggested depths beneath the surface of her civilian contractor role. They identified the source of the discrepancy as a simple clerical error, ammunition that had been transferred to another unit without proper notation in the SEAL team's inventory system. The resolution required only minor paperwork adjustments, but Kane found himself reluctant to end the interaction. Caden's knowledge of military logistics was impressive, and her insights into ammunition usage patterns had proved valuable. "I need to verify one more entry," Kane said, though the investigation was essentially complete. "The heavy machine gun ammunition from last Tuesday." Caden nodded, once again flipping through her notebook to locate the relevant information. This time, as she turned the pages more quickly, searching for the correct date, the hidden patch shifted position, revealing more of its surface to Kane's searching gaze. What he saw made his blood freeze in his veins, a recognition so profound that he had to consciously control his reaction to avoid alerting her to his discovery. The patch showed a stylized skull with crosshairs centered over its forehead, surrounded by a border of thorned wire, rendered in black thread against the desert camouflage background. Above the skull, embroidered in block letters, were the words, "Phantom Sniper." Below, in smaller text that was barely visible, Kane could make out 2,700-meter club, and what appeared to be a number, though the angle made it difficult to read clearly. Kane's mind raced as he processed the implications of what he was seeing. The Phantom Sniper patch was legendary within special operations communities, awarded to only the most elite marksmen who had achieved confirmed kills at distances exceeding 2,700 meters. The patch itself was unofficial, created by a small community of snipers who operated in the gray areas between different military branches and intelligence agencies. More troubling was Kane's knowledge that only 4 individuals in military history had earned the right to wear that patch. 3 had been killed in action during classified operations in Afghanistan and Iraq between 2006 and 2012. The 4th, according to all available records, had been declared killed in action during a black operation in Syria 3 years ago. Their body never recovered due to the sensitive nature of the mission. Yet here was this patch, hidden in the notebook of a civilian contractor working ammunition inventory at a stateside military base. The possibilities ran through Kane's mind with tactical precision. The patch could be a reproduction, a memorial piece kept by someone who had known one of the deceased snipers. It could be stolen, acquired through military surplus channels by someone with no connection to its original owner. Or, most unsettling of all possibilities, it could be authentic, belonging to someone who was supposed to be dead. Kane found the entry she was searching for and pointed to the relevant numbers, completely unaware of Kane's discovery. Her casual demeanor suggested no consciousness of having revealed something significant. No recognition that the man beside her was struggling to maintain his composure while processing information that challenged everything he thought he knew about classified personnel records. Tuesday's delivery was 4,200 rounds of 7.6 Tu NATO, she said, her voice steady as she traced the entry with her finger. Distributed across 3 different units according to their training schedules. Kane forced himself to focus on her words, though his attention remained fixed on the hidden patch that had shifted back out of view as she settled on the correct page. The implications of its presence continued to cascade through his mind, each possibility more complex than the last. His training demanded that he treat this as a potential security breach, but something about Caden's calm competence suggested that any hasty action might drive away answers he desperately needed. "That matches our records," Kane replied, his voice carefully controlled despite the turmoil of his thoughts. "Thank you for your assistance." Caden nodded, closing the notebook with casual finality and returning to her morning inventory work. The patch disappeared completely from view, hidden once again between pages of ammunition counts and logistics notes. Her manner suggested that their interaction was finished, that she expected Kane to return to his team and continue with whatever business had brought them to the depot. Instead, Kane found himself reluctant to leave, his mind churning with questions that demanded answers. The mystery of the patch weighed on him like a tactical problem requiring solution, though he recognized that direct confrontation would likely prove counterproductive. Caden had already demonstrated a reluctance to discuss her background, and pushing too hard might cause her to shut down completely, or, worse, disappear if she was indeed someone with reason to maintain a low profile. "I may need to follow up on some of these records later this week," Kane said, buying himself time to consider his next move. "Would you be available for additional questions?" "I'm here Monday through Friday, 0700 to 1500, Caden replied without looking up from her current page of entries. "Anything specific I should prepare?" "Nothing urgent," Kane assured her, though internally he was already planning his approach. "Just routine follow-up to ensure our records are completely aligned." Caden accepted this explanation with a slight nod, her attention apparently focused entirely on the ammunition crate she was currently cataloging. Her dismissal was polite but complete, the kind of professional courtesy that indicated their business was concluded. Kane recognized the signal and gathered his paperwork, knowing that lingering longer would seem suspicious. As he rejoined his team, Kane's mind was already working through the limited options available to him. Direct inquiry through official channels, would require explanations he wasn't prepared to give, particularly if his suspicions proved unfounded. The Phantom Sniper program remained classified at levels that made casual investigation impossible, and any formal inquiry would trigger security reviews that might compromise ongoing operations. His team completed their audit without finding additional discrepancies, their investigation concluding with the minor paperwork corrections that Caden's records had made possible. The other team members expressed satisfaction with the depot's record-keeping, noting the exceptional accuracy that made their job considerably easier than typical ammunition audits. Kane participated in their final discussions, while part of his attention remained focused on the woman at the corner desk. Caden continued her work with the same methodical precision, showing no awareness of the scrutiny she had attracted or the questions her hidden patch had raised. Her calm competence suggested someone accustomed to maintaining composure under pressure, though whether that pressure came from military service, clandestine operations, or simply the demands of her current job remained unclear. The team departed the depot at 1300 hours, their official business concluded, but Kane's personal investigation just beginning. He found himself reviewing everything he knew about the Phantom Sniper program, searching his memory for details that might help him understand what he had discovered. The program had operated in the shadows of special operations, drawing personnel from different branches who demonstrated exceptional marksmanship skills and psychological stability under extreme berg conditions. The 4 confirmed members of the 2700-meter club had achieved their status through kills made at ranges that challenged the limits of current technology and human capability. Each shot represented not just exceptional marksmanship, but also intelligence gathering, mission planning, and operational security that kept their locations secret from enemy forces seeking revenge. Sarah, Ghost, Chen had been the first to achieve the distance, her kill shot in Afghanistan eliminating a high-value target from a mountainside position that military analysts had declared impossible. Her death 6 months later during a rescue operation had been confirmed through multiple sources, though her body had never been recovered from the remote valley where her helicopter had crashed. Marcus Reaper Williams had earned his patch through 3 separate kills in Iraq, each shot made from positions so well concealed that enemy forces never located his hide sites. His death during an urban operation in Fallujah had been witnessed by multiple team members, though the intense fighting had prevented immediate recovery of his body. David Wraith Park had achieved his qualifying distance during a classified operation in Somalia, eliminating multiple targets from a single position before extracting under heavy fire. His death in Syria had been reported through intelligence channels, but never officially confirmed, as the nature of his mission prevented acknowledgement of his presence in the country. The 4th member of the club remained classified even in Kane's security clearance level, identified only by a code name that appeared in operation reports without personal details. This individual's death had been reported 3 years ago during a black operation in Syria, but like Park's case, the sensitive nature of the mission had prevented official confirmation or body recovery. Kane realized that he was operating on assumptions that might prove completely wrong. The patch could belong to a family member of one of the deceased snipers, kept as a memorial despite regulations against retaining classified items. It might be a reproduction created by military collectors, detailed enough to fool casual observation, but lacking the specific modifications that marked authentic patches. More disturbing was the possibility that the patch was genuine and belonged to someone who had survived missions that officially ended in their death. Classified operations sometimes required personnel to disappear, their deaths reported while they began new lives under different identities. The government had used such tactics throughout the Cold War, and continued to employ them when operations became too sensitive for normal channels. If Caden was indeed a surviving member of the Phantom Sniper program, her presence at a routine military depot represented either a massive security breach or an assignment so classified that even Kane's clearance level didn't grant access to the relevant information. Either possibility demanded investigation, but both required extreme caution to avoid compromising ongoing operations or endangering personnel who might be operating under deep cover. Kane spent the remainder of his afternoon researching everything available about the depot's civilian contractors, though he quickly discovered that such inquiries triggered automatic notifications to security personnel. His requests for background information on Caden Rowe, generated responses that her employment had been processed through normal channels. Her security clearance was appropriate for her duties, and her performance tried. Reviews were consistently excellent. The official records painted a picture of a competent professional with no military service record. Hired 3 years ago based on her experience in logistics management with several defense contractors. Her references had been verified. Her background check had revealed no concerning information, and her work at the depot had been exemplary. Everything appeared normal, which in Kane's experience often indicated exceptional care in creating false identities. That evening, Kane found himself considering options that pushed the boundaries of both regulations and ethics. His security clearance provided access to databases that might reveal inconsistencies in Caden's background, but using those resources for unauthorized investigations violated multiple policies and could end his career. His position as a SEAL team commander gave him considerable autonomy, but not enough to justify the surveillance and investigation that his instincts demanded. The smart play would be to report his discovery through official channels, allowing security personnel to investigate while he maintained plausible deniability. Such a report would trigger a comprehensive investigation that would either confirm his suspicions or eliminate them completely. However, if Caden was indeed operating under an authorized cover identity, his report might compromise her mission and endanger her life. Kane's military training emphasized the importance of following proper procedures, but his operational experience had taught him that rigid adherence to protocol could sometimes prevent the best outcomes. The situation demanded flexibility and judgment, qualities that had made him effective in special operations, but were now creating conflict between his official duties and his personal investigation. He decided to return to the depot the following day, ostensibly to complete some routine paperwork, but actually to observe Caden more carefully and look for additional evidence that might clarify her true identity. The approach carried risks, as any unusual interest in a civilian contractor would eventually be noticed and reported. However, Kane believed he could maintain the appearance of routine business while gathering the information he needed. Tuesday morning found Kane back at the ammunition depot, armed with a plausible excuse about verifying serial numbers for an upcoming training exercise. His early arrival allowed him to observe Caden's routine without the distraction of his team members, who remained focused on their own training schedule at the main base. Caden was already at her desk when Kane arrived, her green notebook open to a fresh page as she worked through the morning's inventory deliveries. Her appearance was exactly as he remembered, neat and professional without drawing attention, her dark hair pulled back in a style that was practical rather than fashionable. She looked up briefly as he entered, nodding in acknowledgement before returning to her work. Kane approached her desk with manufactured casualness, carrying a clipboard that contained legitimate paperwork requiring completion. His cover story would hold up to casual scrutiny while providing justification for spending extended time in the depot. More importantly, it positioned him where he could observe Caden's behavior and potentially catch another glimpse of the hidden patch. "Good morning, Miss Rowe," Kane said, settling into a nearby chair with his paperwork. "I hope you don't mind if I work here while I verify these serial numbers. The lighting is better than in the main office." "Not a problem, Commander," Caden replied, her tone professional but not unfriendly. "Let me know if you need access to any of the inventory records." Kane spread his papers across the small table, creating the appearance of serious work while maintaining awareness of Caden's activities. Her morning routine was methodical. Each ammunition delivery processed with the same careful attention to detail he had observed the previous day. She worked efficiently but not hurriedly, taking time to double-check entries and cross-reference information across multiple sources. As the morning progressed, Kane found himself genuinely impressed by her professional competence, regardless of questions about her background. Her knowledge of ammunition specifications was encyclopedic, her understanding of military logistics was sophisticated, and her record-keeping was meticulous. These qualities could reflect extensive experience with defense contractors, but they might also indicate military training that extended beyond what civilian contractors typically possessed. Around 10:30, a delivery truck arrived with a special shipment that required immediate processing. The driver explained that the ammunition was needed for an urgent training exercise, paperwork to be completed later due to time constraints. Such irregular deliveries were common in military logistics, but they required careful handling to maintain proper accountability. Kane watched as Caden efficiently processed the delivery, her questions and procedures revealing deep understanding of military protocols. She knew exactly which information was essential for immediate documentation and which details could be deferred without compromising security. Her smooth handling of the irregular situation suggested experience with similar circumstances, the kind of adaptability that came from extensive field experience. "You handle irregular deliveries very well," Kane commented as she completed the paperwork. "Most contractors would need to check procedures or call supervisors. Experience teaches you what's essential and what can wait," Caden replied, filing the documentation in its proper location. "Urgent situations don't allow time for perfect procedures." Kane noted her choice of words, particularly her reference to urgent situations rather than irregular deliveries. The phrase suggested familiarity with circumstances where speed took priority over normal protocols, scenarios more common in military operations than civilian logistics. Such language could be unconscious, reflecting background experiences that influenced her current vocabulary. The morning continued without additional unusual events, but Kane found himself increasingly convinced that Caden's background extended well beyond her official employment record. Her competence was too complete, her knowledge too comprehensive, and her adaptability too smooth for someone whose experience came only from civilian defense contracting. Everything about her suggested military training, though the specific nature of that training remained unclear. Shortly before noon, Caden excused herself for a brief break, leaving her notebook closed on the desk while she stepped outside for what Kane assumed was a cigarette break. Her absence provided the opportunity he had been hoping for, though he recognized the significant ethical and legal issues involved in examining her personal property without permission. Kane's training and operational experience had familiarized him with the necessity of gathering intelligence through methods that existed in gray areas between legal and illegal, authorized and unauthorized. His current situation didn't officially justify such methods, but his instincts insisted that the information was important enough to warrant careful risk-taking. He approached Caden's desk with casual purpose, positioning himself where he could observe the area while maintaining awareness of her potential return. The notebook lay closed, its worn cover revealing nothing about the secrets it might contain. Kane understood that opening it would constitute a clear violation of privacy and possibly criminal trespass, but his need for answers was beginning to outweigh his concerns about proper procedures. Before he could decide whether to proceed, the sound of approaching footsteps announced Caden's return from her break. Kane stepped back to his own workspace, his decision made for him by circumstances beyond his control. The missed opportunity frustrated him, but he recognized that patience would eventually provide other chances to investigate. Caden resumed her work without comment, though Kane thought he detected a slight tension in her posture that hadn't been present earlier. Her casual glance around the area suggested awareness that someone might have approached her desk during her absence, though she showed no overt suspicion or concern. The subtle change in her demeanor indicated situational awareness that exceeded normal civilian contractor expectations. The afternoon passed slowly as Kane struggled to balance his genuine paperwork requirements with his desire to continue observing Caden. His presence at the depot was becoming increasingly difficult to justify, as the serial number verification that served as his cover story should have been completed within a few hours. Staying longer risked drawing unwanted attention from supervisors who might question his extended presence. Kane made the decision to depart before his presence became noteworthy, but not before making one final attempt to gather information. As he prepared to leave, he approached Caden's desk with a question about ammunition specifications that would require her to consult her notebook. The request was legitimate enough to avoid suspicion while potentially providing another glimpse of the hidden patch. "Miss Rowe, do you have the lot numbers for the 76TU match ammunition from last month?" Kane asked, standing beside her chair in the same position as the previous day. "I need to verify compatibility with our rifle specifications." Caden nodded, opening her notebook and flipping toward the relevant section. Kane positioned himself to maximize his viewing angle while maintaining the appearance of professional interest in her records. His pulse quickened as she approached the pages where the patch was hidden, hoping for another opportunity to examine the evidence that had triggered his investigation. However, as Caden reached the relevant section, she paused and closed the notebook partially, looking up at Kane with an expression that was difficult to interpret. Her dark eyes met his with directness that suggested she was evaluating him just as carefully as he was studying her. The moment stretched between them, laden with unspoken questions and careful assessment. "Commander Kane," she said slowly, her voice carrying undertones that hadn't been present in their previous interactions. "Is there something specific you're looking for?" The question was ostensibly about the ammunition specifications, but Kane sensed deeper meaning behind her words. Her tone suggested awareness that his interest extended beyond routine paperwork, though whether that awareness came from guilt, training, or simple intuition remained unclear. The direct challenge in her voice indicated someone unafraid of confrontation, despite her apparent civilian status. "Just the lot numbers," Kane replied carefully, maintaining his cover story while studying her reaction. "We've had some accuracy issues that might be related to ammunition consistency." Caden held his gaze for another moment before reopening her notebook, but this time she turned directly to the correct page without providing opportunities for Kane to glimpse other sections. Her movements were precise and economical, showing him exactly what he had requested while keeping other information concealed. The technique suggested training in operational security that exceeded civilian expectations. "Lot number 8851, she said, pointing to the specific entry. "Manufactured by Lake City in March, shipped to you on the 28th of last month." Kane noted the information while also observing that Caden had maintained complete control over what portions of her notebook remained visible. Her technique was subtle but effective, providing requested information while protecting potentially sensitive content. Such skills suggested experience with classified materials and security protocols that wouldn't be part of normal contractor training. "Thank you," Kane said, accepting that he would gain no additional information through this approach. "That should resolve our accuracy issues." Caden closed her notebook and returned it to its usual position on her desk, her movements calm but deliberate. Kane sensed that their interaction had shifted in ways that might affect future opportunities to investigate. Her increased awareness of his interest would make additional surveillance more difficult and potentially more dangerous if his suspicions about her background proved accurate. Kane departed the depot with more questions than answers, his investigation having provided tantalizing hints without definitive proof. The brief glimpse of the patch remained the most concrete evidence supporting his suspicions, but even that could be explained through innocent means. His operational instincts insisted that Caden was more than she appeared, but instincts alone wouldn't justify the actions necessary to uncover the truth. That evening, Kane found himself wrestling with the ethical implications of his investigation. His suspicions about Caden could be completely wrong, making his surveillance an unjustified invasion of privacy that violated both regulations and common decency. However, if his instincts were correct, her presence at the depot represented either a security breach that demanded investigation or a classified operation that his interference might compromise. The complexity of the situation reminded Kane why special operations personnel often found themselves operating in moral gray areas where clear-cut answers were rare and every decision carried significant consequences. His training had prepared him for tactical challenges and operational complexities, but the human elements of intelligence work remained difficult territory that required careful navigation. Kane decided that his next step would be to conduct discreet research into the fourth member of the 2700-meter club, the sniper whose identity remained classified even at his security level. If Caden was indeed that person, understanding the circumstances of their supposed death might provide clues about their current status and mission. Such research would push the boundaries of his authorization, but it might provide answers without requiring direct confrontation. Wednesday morning found Kane in his office before dawn, using his security clearance to access databases that might contain information about classified sniper operations. His searches were careful and methodical, designed to appear routine while gathering intelligence about operations that officially didn't exist. The work required patience and technical skill, as the most sensitive information was buried in cross-referenced files that required systematic analysis to reveal. After several hours of investigation, Kane began to piece together fragments of information about the fourth Phantom sniper. The individual had operated under multiple code names across different operations, their real identity compartmentalized to such a degree that even their gender was unclear from most reports. Mission summaries referred to exceptional marksmanship skills, innovative tactics, and operational security that made them nearly impossible to track or target. The most revealing information came from after-action reports that mentioned the sniper's ability to adapt to changing circumstances and integrate with diverse military units. Several commanders had noted their unusual combination of technical expertise and interpersonal skills, qualities that made them effective both as a shooter and as a team member. Such versatility was rare among elite snipers, who often specialized in solitary operations that relied on individual rather than collective skills. Kane's research revealed that the 4th Sniper's last confirmed operation had taken place in Syria 3 years ago, part of a classified mission to eliminate high-value targets in territory controlled by SIA hostile forces. The operation had been compromised through unknown means, resulting in heavy casualties among the supporting team and the reported death of the sniper during their extraction attempt. However, the details of the sniper's death were inconsistent across different reports, with some indicating they had been killed by enemy fire, while others suggested they had been lost during an explosion that destroyed their position. No body had been recovered due to the sensitive nature of the mission and the dangerous territory where the operation had taken place. The inconsistencies suggested either poor intelligence gathering or deliberate obfuscation to protect ongoing operations. Most intriguingly, Kane discovered references to post-mission intelligence that suggested the sniper might have survived the official reports of their death. Intercepted communications from hostile forces mentioned unsuccessful attempts to locate and capture a foreign sniper who had continued operating in the region after the supposed date of their death. Such reports were typically dismissed as enemy propaganda, but their consistency and detail suggested they might be based on actual events. Kane's investigation was interrupted by a call from his commanding officer requesting an immediate briefing about his team's recent ammunition audit. The timing seemed coincidental, but Kane's operational paranoia made him wonder whether his research activities had triggered automatic security protocols that flagged unusual database access patterns. Such monitoring systems were designed to prevent unauthorized intelligence gathering, exactly the kind of activity in which he had been engaging. The briefing proved routine, focused on the administrative aspects of the ammunition discrepancy rather than any security concerns. Kane's commanding officer expressed satisfaction with the thoroughness of the investigation and the resolution of the record-keeping issues. No mention was made of Kane's extended presence at the depot or his research into classified sniper operations, suggesting that his activities hadn't yet attracted official attention. However, Kane recognized that his window of opportunity for discreet investigation was closing rapidly. Continued research into classified operations would eventually trigger security reviews that would expose his unauthorized activities and potentially end his career. More importantly, if Kane was indeed operating under authorized deep cover, his investigation might compromise her mission and endanger her life. Kane made the difficult decision to attempt direct contact with Caden, recognizing that such an approach carried significant risks, but offered the best chance of resolving his questions without triggering official investigations. His plan was to approach her after normal working hours, when their conversation would be private, and her responses might be more candid than during official business hours. Thursday evening found Kane waiting in the parking lot outside the ammunition depot, positioned where he could observe Caden's departure without being obviously intrusive. His approach violated several boundaries of appropriate behavior, but his operational experience had taught him that sometimes unconventional methods were necessary to achieve important objectives. The key was to proceed carefully and be prepared to retreat if the situation developed in unexpected directions. Caden emerged from the depot at her usual time, 1500 hours, her appearance exactly as Kane had come to expect. She walked to her vehicle, a nondescript sedan that was several years old but well-maintained, with movements that suggested continued awareness of her surroundings, despite the routine nature of her departure. Kane waited until she had reached her car before approaching, timing his arrival to seem coincidental rather than planned. "Miss Rowe," Kane called out as he crossed the parking lot, affecting surprise at encountering her. "Finishing up for the day?" Caden turned at the sound of his voice, her expression neutral but alert. Kane thought he detected a slight tension in her posture, as if his presence had activated some form of defensive readiness. Her response was polite but guarded, suggesting that she was prepared for this interaction to develop beyond casual conversation. "Commander Kane," she replied, her tone carefully modulated. "I didn't expect to see you here. Are you conducting another audit?" "Actually, I was hoping to speak with you privately," Kane said, abandoning any pretense of coincidental meeting. "There are some questions I'd like to ask, if you have a few minutes." Caden's expression didn't change, but Kane sensed increased alertness in her manner. Her dark eyes studied his face with the kind of assessment that suggested she was evaluating both his intentions and potential threat level. The silence stretched between them as she weighed her response, and Kane realized that her answer would determine the direction of their relationship going forward. "What kind of questions?" she asked finally, her voice revealing nothing of her thoughts. "The kind that might be better discussed somewhere more private," Kane replied, gesturing toward the empty parking lot that offered little concealment from potential surveillance. "Perhaps over coffee?" Caden considered his proposal for long moments, her gaze never leaving his face as she processed the implications of accepting or declining his invitation. Kane understood that she was evaluating not just the immediate situation, but the broader context of his interest in her background and activities. Her decision would reveal important information about her own assessment of risks and opportunities. "There's a diner about 2 miles down the road," she said finally. "Morrison's Family Restaurant. I can meet you there in 20 minutes. Kane nodded his agreement, recognizing that her choice of location was strategically sound. A public restaurant provided security through visibility, while offering enough background noise to mask their conversation from casual surveillance. Her selection demonstrated tactical thinking that supported his growing conviction about her military background. "I'll see you there," Kane confirmed, watching as Caden got into her car and drove away with movements that suggested continued situational awareness. Kane used the 20-minute interval to consider his approach to the upcoming conversation. His objectives were to gather information about Caden's background, while avoiding direct confrontation that might cause her to shut down or disappear. The balance would be delicate, requiring him to demonstrate enough knowledge to earn her trust, while avoiding revelations that might compromise ongoing operations or endanger her safety. Morrison's Family Restaurant proved to be exactly the kind of establishment Caden had chosen deliberately, a busy diner filled with families and workers grabbing dinner after long shifts. The ambient noise provided natural cover for sensitive conversations, while the multiple exits and clear sightlines offered security advantages for someone trained to evaluate tactical situations. Kane found Caden already seated in a corner booth, positioned where she could observe both the entrance and the kitchen exit while keeping her back to a solid wall. "Commander," she said as he approached, gesturing to the seat across from her. "I took the liberty of ordering coffee for both of us." Kane slid into the booth, noting that his position offered fewer advantages than hers, but still provided reasonable situational awareness. The seating arrangement suggested that while Caden was willing to meet with him, she was maintaining control over the tactical aspects of their encounter. Her choice demonstrated professional competence that extended well beyond civilian contractor expectations. "Thank you," Kane said, accepting the coffee cup that arrived moments after he sat down. "I appreciate you agreeing to meet with me. Your invitation suggested this was important," Caden replied, her dark eyes studying his face with continued assessment. "What's on your mind, Commander?" Kane had rehearsed several different opening approaches during his drive to the restaurant, but facing Caden across the table, he found himself drawn to directness rather than elaborate misdirection. Something about her calm competence suggested that she would respond better to honest questions than to manipulation or deception. "I saw the patch in your notebook," Kane said quietly, leaning forward to ensure their conversation remained private despite the restaurant's background noise. The Phantom Sniper patch. Caden's expression didn't change, but Kane detected a subtle shift in her posture that suggested his words had hit their target. She took a slow sip of her coffee, using the gesture to buy time for consideration while maintaining eye contact that revealed neither confirmation nor denial of his statement. "Patches can mean many things," she said finally, her voice steady and non-committal. "Military families often keep mementos of their service members. The 2700-meter club isn't something you inherit from family members," Kane replied, pressing forward despite her deflection. "Only 4 people in history earned that patch. and according to official records, all 4 are dead. Kayden set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision, her movements controlled and economical in ways that reminded Kane of snipers he had worked with during special operations. Her silence stretched between them, loaded with unspoken implications that could lead their conversation in multiple directions depending on her next response. "What is it you think you know, Commander Kane?" she asked, her tone carrying subtle warning that suggested he was approaching dangerous territory. "And more importantly, what do you plan to do with whatever conclusions you've reached?" Kane recognized that they had moved beyond casual conversation, into territory where every word carried significant weight. Kayden's question revealed that she understood the implications of their discussion, while making it clear that his next statements would determine the nature of their relationship going forward. Her calm demeanor suggested someone accustomed to high-stakes conversations where mistakes could prove deadly. "I know that the 4th member of the club was reported killed in Syria 3 years ago," Kane said, maintaining steady eye contact despite the increasing tension. "I also know that the circumstances of that death were never fully verified due to the classified nature of the mission." "And what conclusions are you drawing from that information?" Kayden asked, her voice revealing nothing of her thoughts. "I'm concluding that reports of death can sometimes serve purposes other than simple documentation," Kane replied carefully, "particularly when those deaths occur during operations that require complete deniability." Kayden leaned back in her seat, her posture suggesting evaluation of Kane's statement and its implications. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken communication, as each of them considered the risks and opportunities presented by their increasingly direct conversation. Kane understood that his next words might determine whether he gained a valuable ally or created a dangerous enemy. "You're asking questions that could have serious consequences for both of us," Kayden said finally, her voice carrying weight that confirmed Kane's suspicions about her background. "Are you prepared for the answers you might receive?" "I've spent my entire career dealing with classified operations and their consequences," Kane replied, recognizing that they had moved past the point of plausible deniability. "I understand the importance of operational security and the need for compartmentalized information. Understanding and accepting are different things," Kayden observed, studying his face for signs of doubt or brass. "Uncertainty. Some knowledge carries obligations that can change your life in ways you never anticipated." Kane felt the weight of her words, recognizing that their conversation had reached a critical juncture where his response would commit him to a course of action with unknown consequences. His operational experience told him that backing down now would eliminate any chance of learning the truth, while proceeding forward would involve him in situations that could prove far more complex than his current investigation. "I accept those risks," Kane said, making his choice despite uncertainty about its ultimate implications. "I need to know the truth." Kayden studied him for long moments, her assessment clearly encompassing not just his words, but his demeanor, his background, and his potential value or threat to whatever operation she might be conducting. Kane understood that she was making calculations that would determine whether he became an asset, a liability, or simply another person who needed to be managed through careful misdirection. "The patch belongs to me," she said finally, her admission carrying finality that transformed their relationship from speculation to confirmed reality. "I earned it through 3 confirmed kills at distances exceeding 2,700 meters during operations in Afghanistan and Iraq between 2010 and 2012. Kane felt a surge of validation mixed with apprehension as his suspicions received confirmation. The woman sitting across from him was indeed one of the most elite snipers in military history, someone whose skills and experience exceeded those of virtually any marksman he had encountered during his special operations career. Her presence at a routine ammunition depot represented either an extraordinary waste of talent or a cover assignment that served purposes he was only beginning to understand. "And the death in Syria?" Kane asked, needing complete confirmation of his theories. "Was necessary to complete my transition from military service to other forms of government work," Kayden replied, her tone suggesting that the subject was closed to further discussion. "Some operations require personnel who officially don't exist." Kane absorbed this information, understanding that he had uncovered evidence of a deep cover operation that existed at classification levels beyond his normal access. Kayden's current assignment might be completely unrelated to her previous military service, or it might be part of an ongoing mission that required her to maintain the appearance of civilian employment while conducting surveillance or intelligence gathering. "Why are you telling me this?" Kane asked, recognizing that her admission represented a significant security risk that she wouldn't have accepted without careful consideration. "Because your investigation was beginning to attract attention that could compromise my current assignment," Caden replied, confirming Kane's fears about the visibility of his activities. "It was better to bring you inside the operation, rather than deal with the complications of shutting down your inquiry through official channels." Kane realized that his careful investigation had been far less discreet than he had believed, his activities monitored and evaluated by personnel whose existence he hadn't suspected. The revelation was humbling, reminding him that despite his special operations background, he was operating in an intelligence environment where other professionals possessed skills and resources that exceeded his own. "What is your current assignment?" Kane asked, though he suspected that such information was compartmentalized beyond his need to know. "Monitoring ammunition flows to identify potential security breaches and intelligence leaks," Caden replied, surprising him with her directness. Certain patterns in ammunition usage can reveal operational plans, deployment schedules, and mission parameters that hostile forces could exploit. Kane understood immediately why such an assignment would require someone with Caden's background and skills. Her comprehensive knowledge of military ammunition combined with her operational experience would allow her to identify subtle patterns that might escape notice from conventional security personnel. Her position at the depot provided perfect cover for gathering intelligence while maintaining the appearance of routine civilian employment. "And my team's ammunition audit?" Kane asked, beginning to understand that their encounter might not have been as coincidental as he had believed. "Was one of several activities that suggested potential security breaches," Caden confirmed. "Your unit's ammunition usage patterns indicated either core operational security or deliberate intelligence gathering by hostile forces. My job was to determine which." Kane felt a chill of recognition as he realized that his team had been under investigation by intelligence personnel whose existence they hadn't suspected. The ammunition discrepancies that had seemed like simple administrative errors might actually represent security breaches with implications for ongoing operations and personnel safety. "What did you determine?" Kane asked, though he dreaded the potential answer. "That your team's operational security is excellent, but your administrative procedures need improvement," Caden replied, offering reassurance that eased some of his concerns. The discrepancies resulted from clerical errors rather than intelligence leaks, though the patterns were concerning enough to warrant investigation. Kane understood that his team had passed a security review they hadn't known they were undergoing, their operational competence validated by one of the most qualified evaluators in the intelligence community. However, the knowledge that such reviews were conducted without the awareness of the personnel being evaluated was sobering, reminding him of the extensive surveillance capabilities that existed within the military and IAS intelligence systems. "What happens now?" Kane asked, recognizing that their conversation had fundamentally changed both their relationship and his understanding of the security environment in which he operated. "Now you continue with your normal duties, while being aware that certain activities are monitored more closely than you might have realized," Caden replied. "Your discretion regarding our conversation and my actual assignment is essential for both operational security and personnel safety." Kane nodded his understanding, recognizing that he was now part of a classified operation that required him to maintain compartmentalized information while continuing his normal military duties. The additional layer of complexity would require careful management, but his special operations background had prepared him for situations where multiple missions and loyalties required simultaneous attention. "Is there anything else I should know?" Kane asked, suspecting that their conversation had revealed only the minimum information necessary to ensure his cooperation. "Only that your reputation for discretion and operational competence was part of the evaluation that led to this conversation rather than other methods of managing your investigation," Caden replied, her tone suggesting that alternative approaches might have been considerably less pleasant. Kane understood that his handling of the situation had been tested and evaluated, his responses determining whether he received transparency or faced consequences that could have included anything from career destruction to physical elimination. The revelation was both reassuring and sobering. confirming that he had made correct decisions, while highlighting the serious nature of the forces he had encountered. Their conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Caden providing additional context about her current mission, while maintaining appropriate operational security about specific details. Kane learned that her assignment was part of a broader intelligence operation, focused on identifying and neutralizing security threats within military supply chains, work that required personnel with unique combinations of technical expertise and operational experience. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Kane found himself viewing his routine military duties from a new perspective, understanding that activities he had considered mundane administrative tasks were actually part of complex security systems designed to protect operational information and personnel. His encounter with Caden had revealed layers of intelligence activity that operated parallel to, but separate from his normal chain of command. "Commander Kane," Caden said as they stood to leave, her tone carrying final instructions that would govern their future interactions. "Our professional relationship will continue exactly as it has, with you conducting routine ammunition audits and me providing administrative support. Nothing about our interactions should suggest any connection beyond normal depot operations." Kane understood that they were establishing protocols for maintaining their cover relationship while managing the classified aspects of their actual connection. Such arrangements were common in intelligence work, where personnel often maintained multiple identities and relationships that served different operational purposes. "Understood," Kane replied, recognizing that his response committed him to ongoing participation in her intelligence operation. "Will I be receiving additional briefings about security concerns?" "Only if circumstances require your direct involvement," Caden replied. "For now, your primary contribution is maintaining normal operations while being aware that security evaluations are ongoing." They left the restaurant separately, Caden departing first, while Kane remained for several additional minutes to avoid creating obvious connections between their activities. As he drove back to base, Kane found himself processing the implications of everything he had learned, his understanding of military security transformed by knowledge of intelligence operations that existed beyond his previous awareness. The following weeks established a new routine in which Kane conducted his normal duties while maintaining heightened awareness of security implications that had previously escaped his notice. His interactions with Caden at the ammunition depot continued exactly as before, their professional relationship showing no signs of the classified knowledge they now shared. However, Kane found himself paying closer attention to ammunition usage patterns and administrative procedures, understanding that these details contributed to broader intelligence assessments. Kane's team noticed no changes in his leadership or operational focus. His additional awareness integrated seamlessly into existing procedures and protocols. His enhanced understanding of security implications actually improved his unit's performance, as he was now able to anticipate and address potential vulnerabilities before they became actual problems. 1 month after their restaurant meeting, Kane encountered evidence of the ongoing intelligence operation when he discovered that ammunition requisitions from several units showed patterns that might indicate security breaches. His recognition of these patterns reflected knowledge gained through his conversation with Caden, understanding that came from awareness of what intelligence analysts were seeking in routine military data. Kane reported his observations through normal channels, while also ensuring that Caden became aware of his findings through their routine depot interactions. Her subtle acknowledgement confirmed that his information was valuable, while maintaining the appearance of normal administrative communication between military personnel and civilian contractors. The incident demonstrated how Kane's expanded awareness enhanced his effectiveness without compromising operational security. His dual role as military officer and intelligence asset managed through careful compartmentalization that protected both missions. His experience illustrated how special operations personnel could contribute to intelligence work while maintaining their primary duties and loyalties. 6 months after discovering the patch, Kane received orders for deployment to a classified operation in Eastern Europe, his selection based partly on recommendations from intelligence personnel whose identities remained unknown to him. As he prepared for departure, Kane understood that his encounter with Caden had initiated a relationship with intelligence systems that would influence his career in ways he was only beginning to appreciate. His final interaction with Caden occurred during a routine ammunition audit the day before his deployment. Their conversation limited to professional topics, while their eye contact conveyed acknowledgement of shared knowledge and mutual respect. Kane understood that their paths might never cross again, but that the lessons learned from their encounter would continue to influence his approach to security and intelligence throughout his military career. As Kane boarded the transport aircraft that would carry him to his new assignment, he reflected on how a simple glimpse of a hidden patch had revealed an entire world of intelligence operations that existed parallel to conventional military structures. His investigation had begun with curiosity about a mysterious woman and evolved into understanding of security systems that protected national interests through methods that remained invisible to most military personnel. Caden continued her work at the ammunition depot, her routine unchanged by Kane's departure, her real mission ongoing despite the resolution of questions that had briefly threatened her operational security. Her cover identity remained intact, her intelligence gathering continued, and her unique skills remained available for assignments that required someone who officially didn't exist. The story of their encounter became another classified chapter in the ongoing history of intelligence work. A reminder that the most critical national security missions were often conducted by personnel whose contributions would never be publicly acknowledged or officially recognized. Their brief intersection had served both immediate operational needs and longer-term strategic objectives, demonstrating how individual initiative and professional competence could enhance national security through careful coordination between military and intelligence personnel. Years later, Kane would occasionally wonder about Caden's subsequent assignments and whether her exceptional skills were being utilized effectively in service of national interests. However, he understood that such questions belonged to classification levels beyond his access, part of the compartmentalized world where some of the most important work remained forever hidden from public knowledge or historical documentation. The patch that had started Kane's investigation remained tucked between the pages of Caden's notebook. A small piece of fabric that represented extraordinary skill, classified sacrifice, and ongoing service to missions that could never be fully acknowledged or completely understood. Its presence served as a daily reminder that the most critical aspects of national defense were often carried out by individuals whose true contributions would remain forever hidden in the shadows of official secrecy and operational necessity. In the end, both Kane and Caden had learned important lessons about the intersection of military service and intelligence work, understanding that the most effective national security required cooperation between different communities of professionals whose missions overlapped in complex ways that demanded mutual respect, careful communication, and absolute discretion. Their story demonstrated how individual encounters could serve broader strategic purposes while protecting the operational security that made such missions possible in the first place. The ammunition depot continued its routine operations, processing thousands of rounds of ammunition for military units across the Pacific Northwest, while serving as cover for Kane. Intelligence activities that contributed to national security in ways that would never appear in official reports or public recognition. The intersection of mundane logistics and classified operations represented the reality of modern intelligence work, where the most important missions were often disguised as the most routine assignments. Kane's deployment to Eastern Europe proved successful, his enhanced security awareness contributing to operational effectiveness, while his discretion protected intelligence sources and methods that had made his extrade mission possible. His experience with Caden had prepared him for the complexities of working with personnel whose true identities and assignments remained classified, skills that proved valuable throughout his continued military career. The story concluded with both protagonists continuing their service to national interests through different channels, their brief intersection having served its purpose, while leaving them with enhanced understanding of the security systems that protected their country through methods that would never be fully revealed or completely understood by those they served to protect.